Oof. Well, it certainly has been heavy here at HQ, gotta admit. But hey, it can't stay heavy forever. Not when we have a fun summertime movie up on deck.
Brought something for the victory party.
What is there to see?
Jackpot.
See, that's exactly what we need right now. A fun little movie to help us move on from—
People put all their privileges online because they thought that it'd be safe.
Exactly. Maybe it even grabs the president's account and fires a couple of nukes.
nuclear annihilation. Well, it seems apropos that the end of summer should coincide with our look at Summer Wars, a 2009 anime film directed by Mamoru Hosoda, who I don't think we've really had the chance to talk about before. We only briefly touched upon his work in my Digimon the Movie review, which is a shame because to read Hosoda's career off feels like a who's who of every major anime franchise of the 90s and the aughts. As animator, he's worked on Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho, even Slam Dunk and Galaxy Express 3-9. As television director, he's helmed Toei projects left and right, ranging from Digimon to One Piece. And yes, I know I've said that I'll finally cover One Piece when it ends. I read the news too. His time working with Toei as an animator and director on several made-for-TV movies and other franchise staples laid the foundation for his then burgeoning filmmaking career, his first original feature film, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, being released in 2006. From then until now, Hosoda would go on to create 4 additional films, his last one being the off-kilter but nonetheless heartfelt Mirai in 2018. Notice how I keep calling his work films and not anime. And that's because he himself wants to make the distinction.
やっぱ本当ね、ともするとね、アニメ界のことしか考えてないとかねもしくはマッドハウスのことしか考えてないとか、ね、いうことになりがちじゃない、ついつい思わず、なんかこう範囲の中でさ、このある特定の範囲の中で自分はどうするかみたいなことをつい考えるんだけど、やっぱり映画っていうのはもっと大きな器でさ、やはり。
On first glance, the distinction feels more like a formality than anything else, made more for the sake of classification than for any perceived lack of glory or prestige. And I can see the utility in that. I mean, the career and job of an animating director is not one-to-one with a traditional live-action director. But the not-so-subtle inference that making anime would be seen as being lesser in the eyes of some came as a surprise to me. After all, it's not like both animation and live-action directors produce completely dissimilar experiences. At the end of the day, their mutually distinguished work are both meant to capture the interest and emotional involvement of a viewing audience, talent and effectiveness of course notwithstanding. How a moving image is captured should matter little as to how said image affects the audience, which I think is what Big Daddy McLuhan was trying to say, you know, between pulling a Ygritte on anyone who disagrees with him.
You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Let's be honest, we've all been this guy, especially these days. And yet, here's Hosoda, kind of throwing the entire industry under the bus during a press junket at the Locarno Film Festival in Switzerland in 2009, a festival whose theme that year was honoring manga and the animation it influenced. Yikes.
もうちょうど10年前ですけど、東映で初めて映画を作らせてもらった時っていうのはね、もっとね、すごいかっこいいものを作ろうとかね、すごいこうソリッドってキメキメなね、バッキバキにかっこいいものを作ろうとかね、そういう意識がね結構あったと思うんですけども、だんだんそれは自分でも思うんですけども、そういうなんかかっこいいものを作るために映画を作るじゃないなみたいなことはなんか思ってますね。
But then again, when you consider the path he took to get to the point of being at a film festival in Switzerland, you can kind of see where he's coming from. Hosoda's story isn't unique by any means. It's hard to find any one director, especially one working these days, that didn't cut his teeth by being a lowly underling for a major animation studio. Even Hayao Miyazaki began by working as an in-between artist for Toei. But with Hosoda, it seems that him breaking away from animating one of the nearly 1,000 episodes of One Piece or one of the umpteen Dragon Ball Z movies, it wasn't so that he could create his own anime. but so that he could create his own films and stories, not just manga or light novel adaptations, a privilege that few directors are ever afforded. Hell, Hosoda was even tapped for directing Howl's Moving Castle for Studio Ghibli back in 2001, but left the project because he wasn't allowed to make the film he wanted to make. But while it's perfectly understandable for Hosoda to feel the way that he does, if we want to understand him and his work, we have to look at the films he wanted to make. This is Summer Wars. Kenji here is your prototypical code monkey, whittling away the hours either going to school or by moderating the near omnipresent Oz, a massive social network platform that seems connected to every facet of human life. Ha! Pure science fiction, of course. But just because he's a whiz at logarithmic mathematics doesn't mean he can string together 2 sentences without tripping over himself.
I almost got to go to the Math Olympics this year.
Wait, Olympics? For math? Hey, you must be pretty good then, huh?
Good thing, because I suck at everything else.
It's made all the worse when his fellow classmate, Natsuki, ropes him into joining her for a giant family reunion, celebrating her great-grandmother's 90th birthday, and introducing him as her fiancé.
Old family, Tokyo U, studying abroad. But that's the exact opposite of me.
So we're good?
No, we're not good.
The charade is tenuously held by the two, with Grandma Janochi only having slight suspicions. Still, Kenji is overwhelmed at meeting Natsuki's extended family, including the youngest, as well as the creepily attached.
Hey, I've been watching out for Natsuki ever since she was this little.
1 centimeter, huh?
And how come she didn't run this by her second cousin first?
How dare she?
Well, he's only her second cousin, so they might as well not be related at all. Your Honor? But as Kenji slowly attenuates himself to the rambunctious household, he kind of brain farts and winds up giving the veritable keys of all of Oz to a malicious AI that threatens the entire world, as well as the use of his own personal avatar. How? By doing what an unsolicited message told him to do.
What is this?
Kid, you work on the internet. How do you see this obviously suspicious message and not immediately delete it? Or do you believe that every website you go to, you just so happen to be the millionth visitor? Well, live and learn to see the entire country's infrastructure collapse due to your idiocy. Classic coming-of-age story, and one that isn't helped by the national news reporting on your involvement. But how could anyone identify him when they've done such a masterful job at obscuring his very easily, it looks like. Well, it wasn't like he was going anywhere by fixing the problem himself.
Who is this freaky imposter anyway? You can't just go around doing whatever you like because you're online. There are rules, you know.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
But dopey and misguided and naive and somewhat spineless and overtly demure and milquetoast and high-strung and ineffectual. Sorry? Despite being all that, there still is a good man trying to set things right. And as the malicious AI, colloquially named Love Machine, who's not so much a hug-and-kissin' fiend, more like a tear you a new structurally superfluous behind fiend. Well, as it makes its way through Oz, gobbling up and corrupting data wherever it goes, it'll be all family hands on deck to save Oz and the entire world. Everyone from the youngest shut-in to the most out-of-touch uncle. On the surface, the plot seems kind of familiar, doesn't it? The malicious AI that evolves and grows stronger as the plot continues, the hacking threat that jeopardizes the planet, the digital avatars.
Sorry we're late.
I was surfing in that and I wiped out.
Did Hosoda just recycle his own movie? Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that Summer Wars follows a lot of the same beats and plot points that the Digimon movie set before, even down to the final battle, which I won't go too much into right now for the sake of not wanting to spoil things. Not to mention the use of the avatars harkens back to the Digimon themselves, and hell, the original title of the Digimon project they lifted from even shares a similar name, Our War Game. That would be one of the 3 different projects that were Frankenstein together to make the Digimon movie. Which certainly explains a lot. But to go back to our war game, you have to realize that it, in of itself, can barely be called a movie. It was a glorified 2-part episode, just long enough to reach the hour mark with commercial breaks. Whereas with Summer Wars, while obviously owing a lot to the existence of our war game, is still a complete story with its own unique plot, separate from what's going on in Oz. But let's put a pin in this because we'll be back. One of the strongest aspects of Summer Wars is its ability to hold these two separate plot lines completely parallel to each other, and yet still have them affect the other. If you were to look at the scenes of Oz and the scenes outside of Oz, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't have guessed they're from the same film. This intentional visual separation from the digital to the analog is further reinforced by how the characters interact with each other, often misunderstanding the significance of the compromised Oz, or outright dismissing this theoretical digital threat because of the family drama that is here in the flesh and blood of the now.
You want us to worry about other people right now? We've got our own troubles, thank you very much.
While Oz is falling apart, creating havoc in the real world, the family Jinochi is dealing with its own unwelcomed guest in the black sheep, Wabisuke. And you can tell he's a renegade because the bastard pours his own beer. Might as well piss on the family grave plot while he's at it.
What you looking at?
Ladies with big boobs.
What was your job in America?
Ninja.
Yeah, really?
But where Wabisuke enters the story is where the digital apocalypse and the family Jinochi plotlines finally meet, as it's revealed that Wabisuke helped to create Love Machine, all to sell to the American government so that they can reclaim their family's lost fortune.
These last couple of years I've been working hard because I wanted to come back home and have you be proud.
In this one singular moment, the central theme of the entire story is brought to the forefront. The theme of contextualizing the past within the present. It's easy to see the family household as a relic of the past, completely removed from the slickness of the present. The family, in turn, are respectful of their traditions and their elders, shying away from the outside world. Is it any coincidence that the two people in the family who seclude themselves away from the gatherings are the baseball-obsessed aunt who constantly hovers around the television, and the cousin who hangs in the literal dark on his computer fighting in tournaments in Oz? And yet, as far removed as their family is from whatever is happening all over the world, even they can't escape what is happening in Oz.
On your feet and die like a man.
I love this scene in particular, not just because it's a well-animated, edited, and paced scene, but because it takes a well-worn trope and turns it right on its head. It's a fairly contrite given that stories, when they focus on large extended families, would harbor a family above all message, clinging to tradition during times of uncertainty. And true enough, Grandma Jinochi reminds the family as such.
Remember to find time to eat together as a family, even when times are rough, especially when times are rough.
But Summer Wars is keen and aware enough to know that just because there is history and comfort and family, that doesn't mean family is without strife and pain. In Wabisuke, we have a cast-out that isn't welcome for reasons not entirely his fault, and while we never get the full picture, we can see that he does genuinely care about Grandma, and in his own way only did what he did for her sake. But as family-driven as his motivations are, he still holds responsibility for the state of the world, and the knowledge of him doing that for the family's sake is tantamount to heresy. A family member creates a modern weapon in the name of his family, so she in turn threatens him with a family weapon, an antique naginata. The past and the present turning on each other. Spoilers from here on out. And as the fallout of Love Machine grows more and more, the family's attempts to save the day are thwarted not just by the cunning of Love Machine, but also the stubbornness of family who can't let go of the past.
Bunch of good-for-nothing sitting around playing a game. I'm keeping poor Granny cool, no thanks to you.
While the cousin obviously wanted to honor his grandmother's body and soul, it's an empty gesture, built on ceremony rather than what the deceased actually wanted. Made all the more clearer when she mentions that she only wants to be remembered, and not an anchor for the rest of the family to moor to.
Make my funeral arrangement a simple affair, just our close friends, and then go back to your day-to-day lives.
But while that is a tangential connection to theme, the core conflict can only be highlighted by it. Wabisuke can't let go of what happened to him, as even his own existence besmirches the family name by virtue of him being a bastard. And that drive, that inability to see his place in the family, is what ultimately kills the woman he sought to save.
The U.S. Army decided to buy Love Machine. We'll have money again, like when Gramps was alive, but even more.
The minute that anything went wrong, this alarm should have notified me. But it stopped receiving the data late last night.
Because of Oz being down.
But in her death, the past can finally be seen and appreciated for what it is. The past. Something to remember and learn from, not something one should live in. And it takes her final words for the family to realize that while she knows they love her, and she them, life will and should go on without her.
Love you all. Goodbye.
And by letting her in the past go, the family are able to look to the present and see Love Machine for the threat that it is, vanquishing Love Machine through the collective help of the entire internet, all through an old game of cards called Koi Koi, another clash between present and past. This theme is rock solid all throughout the story, even when the movie keeps these two separate plot lines from connecting. But when they do, it is felt all the more stronger for it. I just wish more of the film was just as strong. As a film with dozens of characters, it's difficult to parse out character moments for the main lead Kenji to grow through.
Having fun at least?
I don't do well around strangers.
Stop being all emo, seriously.
Eating dinner with you all? Like a real family? I'd never had a chance to do anything like that before. I liked it.
Either Kenji is lying to one of these two people, or there really should have been a scene where Kenji comes around to big family life. Likewise, the relationship shared between Natsuki and Kenji feels tacked on and of little consequence to the plot. Sure, Kenji obviously has a thing for Natsuki, but there's no indication that she reciprocated those feelings for the entirety of the movie. In a story that starts with them pretending to be in a committed relationship, it would only make logical narrative sense that they would wind up in a real relationship if we were to look at their story purely by mechanical means. But I never got the feeling that that was where the story needed to go, or that was where the focus should have been. It feels that their conclusion is coming more out of a sense of obligation than an actual catharsis. But the slights against Summer Wars are slight as compared to what the film accomplishes. It's a fun, exciting action movie with themes of not letting the past dictate who you are in the present. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? If you look at Summer Wars, there's not a lot about it that doesn't feel anime. Lots of kinetic action, bright colorful character design, stylized movement and expression. But then you think about all the scenes that take place outside Oz, and you have to ask yourself, when was the last time you saw an anime about so many different people, particularly people in their middle age and older? You just don't. Not really. Hell, if you wanted to, you could easily read into the meta-narrative as Oz being a callback to the Digimon movie. See? I told you we'd be back. If there is a more context-sensitive way for a director to use themes of the past colliding with the present than by riffing on a previous film of theirs, I don't know it. That the Oz plotline followed our war game almost to the beat just couldn't have been a coincidence, not when everything else lines up the way it has. It's almost as if Hosoda was trying to tell us just how he would have made our war game if he didn't have Toei to answer to, and that he can finally let that part of his career live where it should. When Hosoda talks about anime being separate from filmmaking, I don't believe he's doing it to look down on anime or anything of the sort. It does, however, feel like Hosoda felt creatively stymied by his time working in Toei as a cog in their machine, and seeing him politely skirt around the subject by creating a division between what he did then and what he does now isn't him trying to distance himself from being called an animator, or specifically an anime director, but rather to expand what being an anime director can mean. Of course his films are anime, if we were to go by the strictest definition of what anime is generally accepted as. It is, after all, Japanese animation. But it's Japanese animation that isn't bound to what a parent company thinks would help sell a toy line or other merchandise. It's Japanese animation created for its own sake and created for everyone.
時をかける少女もですし、今回のサマーウォーズもやはりその日本の観客に向けてやっぱり作ってるところはあると思うんですね。まあもしもそのなんていうのかな、日本人っていうこと以外に何かもうなんかこう通じる何かがあるのであれば、作品の中にあるのであれば、お客さんにもその日本以外のお客さんにも何かこう伝わってくれるものがあるだろう。それは僕らが 日本で生きてるその、生きて感じてる気持ちっていうのが要は僕らだけのものじゃなくて、要するにその日本以外のあらゆる人たちに共通の気持ちみたいなものがあると。
Summer Wars might not be Hosoda's best film, but I would argue it's his most career-defining film. And as an autobiography, it is a statement about what anime can be. Sure, anime is a lot of shonen trash, magical girl fluff, isekai retreads, and gobs upon gobs of fan service, but it's also historical fiction, fantasy epics, psychological thrillers, romantic dramas. Hell, anime could be this. Anime is, well, whatever it wants to be. It's just that most times it's only what it's allowed to be. And speaking of allowance, I have a feeling that YouTube would not allow me to put our next anime's title in the subject line. But I can at least show you. Till next time.